The Steam Deck did it first, but the Asus ROG Ally just did it better. The Asus ROG Ally went on sale June 13th, 2023, whereas the Steam Deck was available over a year before that on February 25th, 2022. The Asus ROG Ally comes in at £699.99, which you can get a pretty decent gaming laptop for. The Steam Deck, on the other hand, has 3 price options due to the 3 different storage sizes. So if you get a 64GB edition Steam Deck, then it comes in at £349.99. It's then £459.99 for the 256GB edition. And lastly, the 512GB edition comes in at £569.99. So the price difference between the Asus ROG Ally and the most expensive Steam Deck is £130, which is relatively significant when you're considering picking up games for them. Needless to say, the Asus ROG Ally is leaving the Steam Deck behind a little bit in terms of specifications. The Asus ROG Ally features an AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme chip, which has combined CPU and GPU. This chip was made especially for the Asus ROG Ally, so it's hard to compare it to existing hardware. But let me just say, for an all-in-one chip, it does pack a punch and provides amazing performance when gaming. The Steam Deck also features a custom-made APU, which is the AMD Zen 2 chip. Again, this is hard to compare to existing hardware because it is custom made. However, because it's a little bit older now, it doesn't pull through with the performance the same way that the AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme chip does in the Asus ROG Ally. The Asus ROG Ally, of course, runs on Windows 11, meaning that you have access to a wider library of games because you can access your Steam library, Epic Games library, EA library, Ubisoft library, and literally any other library that you can think of which runs on Windows. Steam Deck, on the other hand, as the name suggests, you can run games from Steam. The Asus ROG Ally features 512GB of storage running off of an SSD, and you also get a micro SD card slot for expansion. The Steam Deck, on the other hand, has 3 storage options: 64GB, 256GB, or 512GB, all of which come in at different prices, and it also has a micro SD card slot for expansion. Both of the devices feature a 7-inch display. However, the Asus ROG Ally's display comes in at 1080p 120Hz, whereas the Steam Deck one only comes in at 720p at 60Hz. Despite being a pretty significant jump from 720p to 1080p, it is actually quite hard to tell the difference between the two when playing on such small screens. However, when the difference pops out is when you're docking either of the devices. If you're planning to use the devices docked with your output coming out on your TV or monitor, then you may notice that you're playing in 720p on a giant flat screen and it's going to look a little bit fuzzy. Now, let's talk performance. For me, it was actually easier for me to judge the performance of the Asus ROG Ally given that I could access such a wide library of games. As someone who's typically a PC gamer, I actually play most of my games across multiple different launchers, primarily Epic Games. So not being able to access this launcher on the Steam Deck was really disappointing. And before you guys come for me and say, Jasmine, that's not the point of the Steam Deck. I know, but you can do that on the Asus ROG Ally, just saying. The Asus ROG Ally's performance was absolutely exceptional. I was able to run games like Cyberpunk 2077, Injustice 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and Counter-Strike, all at amazing frame rates. And this was all while running the games on high settings, so they looked absolutely beautiful. On the other hand, running games like Cyberpunk 2077 on the Steam Deck, it was a little bit of a nightmare. Yeah, sure, it was playable, but I'm not sure that I'd want to play it like that. When running Cyberpunk 2077 on the Steam Deck, you do get optimized Steam Deck settings. However, these look hideous. It feels like I'm kind of playing GTA 4 on my Xbox 360, which isn't the performance you'd expect from a device that came out in 2022. Of course, this is a pretty extreme example. Cyberpunk 2077 is a really demanding game and can even struggle running on some laptops and gaming PCs, but this is just what I found when testing it. When playing much less intensive indie titles, which is what some argue the Steam Deck was made for, like Unpacking or Calico, I didn't experience any frame drops, and of course the graphics looked lovely. Of course, this was the same for the Asus ROG Ally, and I was able to run AAA titles on there too. So you tell me which one is better. One thing that really stood out about the Asus ROG Ally for me were the 3 different modes you can choose from, including silent mode, performance mode, and turbo mode. This isn't really an option on the Steam Deck, with it just sort of running at whatever you set your game settings to run at. but it means that you don't get that extra boost of performance like you do on the Asus ROG Ally when running in turbo mode and plugged in. For those who are looking to use their handheld device more around the house like I do, then the Asus ROG Ally is a much better option for you here because you're typically going to be plugged in a lot of the time, so you get to take advantage of turbo mode, which comes out with absolutely amazing performance and high frame rates. Not that you can't achieve high performance from the Steam Deck too, but the Asus ROG Ally just does it better. In terms of comfort, I found that the Asus ROG Ally was just that little smidge smaller, which made it much more easy for me to hold, because the Steam Deck for me feels ever so slightly too big. If you're someone with bigger hands, then the Asus ROG Ally will probably feel a little bit too small for you, whereas the Steam Deck would feel perfect. One thing I do appreciate about the Steam Deck is the fact that it has trackpads on either side, which were great for navigating menus and stuff like that, but I didn't really find myself using that option too much in game, but other people might. Of course, the Asus ROG Ally doesn't have this, so if you do think you'd be using something like that, then the Steam Deck is obviously the option to go for. All the other controls on both devices are pretty much identical, aside from the fact that the Steam Deck has 2 extra macro keys on the back, so there's 4 total instead of just 2, like on the Asus ROG Ally. The Steam Deck did take some getting used to because of its size, obviously, but in terms of ergonomics, it felt fine to use and hold. All of the buttons were on the top half of the device, same way with the Asus ROG Ally, so I never felt like I was really straining to use anything, and it just felt fine. If you're someone who's used to using a Nintendo Switch, then you might be in shock here with both devices because they are significantly bigger than a Nintendo Switch, and you can really tell when holding them. They weigh in a lot heavier too, which can affect your comfort, because if you're holding them for long periods of time, then you can start to feel a little bit of strain on your wrists. I found that this was particularly the case when using both devices on the go, like on the train or the bus, because I wasn't really resting my hands on a desk or anything like that. It was just sort of in my lap. If that's a point of consideration for you, then keep in mind that the Asus ROG Ally weighs in at 60 grams lighter than the Steam Deck, and you can feel it. The Steam Deck faced stock issues upon launch, but has since recovered, and you can pick up any of the editions now straight from the Valve website. And the Asus ROG Ally still hasn't faced any stock issues since its launch. Despite both devices being great and doing exactly what they say they will do, the Asus ROG Ally just comes out on top. It gives you access to a wider range of gaming libraries versus the Steam Deck, which only lets you access Steam, and it just has better performance, which really does feel worth it for only an extra 130 quid. The Steam Deck did it first, but the Asus ROG Ally just did it better. So for this versus piece, the Asus ROG Ally comes out on top. This has been Jasmine from the Mirror Gaming team. If you'd like to see more hardware content, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!